Whispering Shadows welcomes you all. Hunger Hill, the cursed forest of New England. In the remote corners of New England, a shadowy legend persists, whispered among locals and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Deep within a bleak stretch of woodland known as Hunger Hill lies a place untouched by time or life. Here nothing grows, not a flower nor a weed. Even on the sunniest summer days, the land remains shrouded in an oppressive gloom. Pale, brittle grasses sway as if stirred by a phantom breeze, and ancient, gnarled trees twist skyward like skeletal hands clawing for salvation. It is a place steeped in silence, save for the occasional whispers that seem to rise from nowhere. The locals avoid it at all costs, their fear woven into the folklore of the small, unassuming town that borders its edges. For centuries, Hunger Hill has been known as a threshold, not to another land, but to another plane. A shadowy domain where spirits and creatures of the unseen realm roam freely. The dark history of Hunger Hill. Hunger Hill earned its ominous reputation through a litany of tragic events, beginning long before the first settlers arrived. Native tribes, wise to its dangers, called it the Pale Man's Land, refusing to hunt or settle anywhere near its cursed soil. They believed the land belonged to ghostly beings, entities that watched from the shadows and claimed anyone foolish enough to trespass. In the early 17th century, a Puritan family ignored the warnings and built a modest homestead within the cursed forest. The family consisted of a father, a mother, 2 daughters, and 3 sons. Devout and hopeful, they dismissed the tales of evil spirits, trusting in God to protect them. Yet their faith was no match for what lurked in the dark. After a particularly brutal winter, the entire family was discovered slaughtered in their home. The scene defied explanation. Their bodies were mangled, bearing wounds and bite marks far too small for any known predator. Yet the ferocity of the attack was undeniable. All but one member of the family were found. The eldest son's body was missing. The townsfolk, driven by fear and suspicion, accused him of the murders. Though a search was mounted, snowstorms and the ominous aura of Hunger Hill kept most at bay. The young man was never seen again, and his fate became the stuff of hushed whispers and dark speculation. Whispers in the woods. By the early 20th century, the legend of Hunger Hill had taken root beyond the local town, attracting the attention of Otto Barr, a writer of strange and macabre tales. Barr, the son of German immigrants, sought to compile a book detailing New England's most haunting mysteries. Despite the warnings of locals, he ventured alone into the woods, armed only with a notebook and his curiosity. Days passed with no sign of him. When Barr failed to return, the townsfolk reluctantly organized a search party. They found no trace of his body, only fragments of his possessions. A tattered strip of his jacket, his broken glasses, and his journal, which lay half-buried in a bed of decaying leaves. The final entry in the journal chilled even the most skeptical. They scream at night so loud my ears feel ready to burst. I scream too, praying for God to save me, but there is no salvation here. I've passed the same tree 5 times now, but the village feels further with every step. The pale ones watch me from the shadows. They whisper terrible things. God, why won't they stop screaming? The authorities dismissed the case, citing natural causes and wild animals, but the locals knew better. Hunger Hill had claimed another soul. The lost students. In 1983, the forest claimed its most infamous victims. 5 college students on a summer hiking trip. Bright and carefree, they ventured into the woods, eager to explore. But they underestimated the forest's ability to disorient and ensnare. They quickly lost their way, their laughter fading into desperate arguments as they wandered deeper into the lifeless expanse. That first night, the screaming began. It started as a faint wail and rose to an ear-piercing crescendo. The students, clutching each other in terror, convinced themselves it was a pack of coyotes. But as the screams grew human-like in their anguish, their fragile resolve began to crack. By the second day, their supplies were dwindling and tempers flared. Some claimed to see pale, shadowy figures darting between the trees, always just out of reach. Others reported hearing whispers, low and mocking, in a language they couldn't understand. Exhausted and frightened, they set up camp once more, huddling close as the screams pierced the night again. None of them returned. When search parties combed the forest days later, they found only shredded tents, scattered belongings, and faint trails leading nowhere. Official reports blamed their disappearance on inexperience and exposure. Yet, no bodies were ever recovered. The Stranger's Notebook. In 1997, a drifter named Elias Moore claimed to have spent 3 days and nights in Hunger Hill. His story was met with skepticism until he produced a weathered notebook filled with crude sketches and cryptic notes. Among the most chilling entries was a sketch of a figure, impossibly tall and thin, with hollow eyes and elongated fingers. Elias referred to it only as the Watcher. The Watcher waits, always at the edge of sight. It doesn't move like us. It flows like smoke, but solid. It knows your name, your fears, your sins. It calls them out, but not with words. You feel them. You hear them in your own thoughts. And once it knows you, you can never leave. Though Elias escaped the forest, his mental state deteriorated rapidly. He spoke in fragmented sentences, muttering about shadows inside shadows. He vanished a year later, leaving the notebook as the only testament to his ordeal. The modern haunting. In 2005, a nature photographer named Claire Markham decided to brave the legends, seeking to capture the eerie beauty of Hunger Hill for an ecological magazine. She approached the woods with skepticism, dismissing the stories as folklore designed to keep thrill-seekers away. Claire's camera, a state-of-the-art device, failed her almost immediately. Batteries drained inexplicably, and the few photos she managed to take were distorted, as if warped by unseen hands. Still, she pressed on, driven by curiosity and professional pride. That night, she made camp near a clearing. As darkness fell, the now familiar screams erupted around her. Trembling, she clutched her flashlight, its weak beam cutting through the oppressive blackness. Then she saw them, pale figures with hollow eyes, their bodies twisted and inhuman, circling her tent. She ran, abandoning her gear, her breath ragged as she stumbled through the maze-like forest. Claire emerged hours later, scratched and bleeding, but alive. She never spoke publicly about what she saw, but her unpublished notes described her ordeal in chilling detail. The magazine's editor dismissed the photos and notes as the work of a traumatized mind. Claire left her career soon after, retreating into obscurity. The legend lives on. To this day, Hunger Hill remains a place of mystery and dread. Paranormal investigators occasionally venture into its shadowed depths, but few return with anything more than malfunctioning equipment and stories of terror. Locals continue to warn against venturing too close, their fear rooted in generations of tragedy. Perhaps Hunger Hill is simply an eerie patch of land with an unfortunate history. Or perhaps it is something more, a cursed place where the veil between worlds is thin, and the pale ones wait, forever hungry for those who dare to cross their threshold. A haunting question: what keeps the forest of Hunger Hill so shrouded in darkness? Is it merely the weight of stories told over centuries, or is there truly a force within the woods defying understanding? Those who have seen the pale ones would argue the latter. If you ever find yourself near New England, staring at the edges of a forest where the light dims unnaturally fast, remember, not every story is just a story. Some places are better left alone. Until we meet again, the shadows of Hunger Hill stretch far beyond its cursed woods, reaching into the imagination of all who hear its tale. If you felt a chill reading this, perhaps the pale ones are closer than you think. What do you believe? Is it just a legend, or is there truth lurking in the dark? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Whispering Shadows. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another spine-chilling story. Your support helps keep these eerie tales alive, and who knows, the next mystery we uncover might be one step closer to you. See you in the shadows.